Hey everyone. It's sun's going down a bit, but my light's not doing what it's supposed to do. My overhead light went out again. There we go. That's better. Um, I don't even know where to get started with this. I started reading a story. It's called Limited Extra Time, and then in parentheses, the time of the terminally ill extra. Um, I've read one similar to this before. Uh, this is basically about art disease. I have read another manga that was very similar to this. I can't remember the name of it now. It's been so long. This one is a side character um, that was mentioned in the other book that in the other manga that I had read. Um, I started reading this one. It popped up and it said it was new, and I was like, oh, well, I've got to read this because it looks pretty good. I've gotten to chapter 14 and I'm pissed. I am just fuming. Ever since there's an older brother, and obviously, when he was first born, he got all the attention. Then our main character, Karina, was born. Um, Never got any attention. Still always had to concede the attention to her brother. They kept delaying her birthday parties to go on family outings or to go and celebrate his swordsmanship thing or something like that. Then she had her two, then she had another brother, younger brother, that came after her. And then the attention was split between the two. Then the twins were born. And one of the twins, Arabella, is ill. Well, has a very weak constitution, which of course then all attention is subsided basically to her. The parents don't even realize that they neglected her, the main character. She tries to do everything for her sick sister without knowing that she herself is very ill. Um, and to cope with the loneliness and the neglect, she starts painting. Now, the art's disease is in this book described as miracles. Their paintings practically come to life. Music has healing properties. There's all sorts of different things, but it eats away at their bodies and their souls, literally killing them to make beautiful art. Um, and they call it miracles. For a long period of time, she's been dealing with the pain and the fevers and the suffering of it, and still her parents never gave her any attention. They would always leave her to go and do something else, still delaying birthday parties and all sorts of crap. Well, she hears from the doctor that she goes to. Um, at this point, she already had a rough idea of how sick she was. So she goes to a doctor after vomiting uh, blood, and he checks her out and basically tells her, you've basically says a year is pushing it. You'd be lucky to survive that long. Um, there are ways to prolong life, but there is no cure. Um, the best cure would basically be to stop their art, whether that's playing an instrument, drawing, anything of the sort, any art whatsoever. Um, but because her art, she started doing that because of how lonely she was. There was no way she was going to stop. So, what she does is she runs away from home after her parents try blaming her for something she didn't do, as per usual. She only gets yelled at. And so she leaves a note and runs away. They didn't even notice she was gone. The maids don't know when they last saw her. The siblings don't know when they last saw her. Parents don't know when they last saw her. They go looking for her everywhere. And of course, that's the only time they notice. And then, of course, the mom and dad are sitting there talking and just basically saying they're going to punish her when they find her for causing them so much trouble and blah blah blah. She took a uh 2 month long journey to go and see her fiance that she's politically married to. Um, well, engaged to. Basically thinking that if she shows up, he won't kick her out, which is basically true. Um, she ends up getting to stay there, and she says it's only for about 3 to 10 months. No, 6 to 10 months, I believe, is what she said. Um, and then she falls ill with a fever, and he goes to check on her. Basically, ends up caring more about her than anything else. Um, Starts nagging her to take care of herself and blah blah blah, and basically being overprotective because she's sick. And of course, every now and then you get that to what are her parents doing, what is her family doing. They're still searching, but all they're saying is bad shit about her. And then of course the dad at his desk, not being able to find Karina at all, starts looking at Arabella's picture. And the first thing that came to my head was, you don't even have one picture of her, of Karina, at all. Not one. They have one family portrait, and he doesn't even have that in his office. And in the story, he goes, "Did I not have a picture of Karina? No, no, you fucking didn't. Did any of you even pay any attention to her? She's with a complete stranger right now, and he's giving her more attention than she's ever gotten in the however many years she was alive. They don't tell you how old she is. I'm assuming that she's somewhere between 18 and 20, maybe 22, 18 to 22. I'm not entirely sure. Um, could be younger, could be older. Um, she's getting all the attention that she wanted from a complete stranger, and he finds out about her disease after she passes out on him. He calls the doctor, and the doctor's basically saying, well, we don't know much about this disease here in the north because we were recently conquered. We have mainly soldiers here. Um, so Art's disease isn't common where her fiance lives. So they have to get a doctor from the south and bring him up, which happens to be the doctor that told her she was going to die. Um, Even he doesn't remember her name. which is sad. I Everyone's always like, "Well, don't get emotionally caught up in these stories and blah 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 and stuff like that." And it's like it's hard not to. One, I've been through it, and two, I can I don't know the best way to put it. I guess the simplest way to put it is I'm an empath. So if someone writes it that way, I'm going to feel it that way. Um, so of course I'm sitting here crying and feeling heartbroken and just kind of lost and everything like that. And I know it's not my feeling, so I don't let it sink in. But the more I'm reading this story, the more pissed off I'm getting at her family, the more pissed off I'm getting at her siblings, her parents, to the family doctor, and all the people around her. No one paid attention. The only good attention she got was from her fiance, and his one line to her at their engagement party was stop acting like a squid. Basically, because she's getting dragged around everywhere. Um, just if I found out that I only had a year left to live, not even, that would be pushing it. Um, but if a doctor told me that pushing it, you have a year left, I would probably be depressed. I would probably curl up in a ball, cry, and then resolve myself to doing what I want to do. Um, whether that's going traveling or just playing games or something. Most likely traveling. Um, she gets this news and just smiles, and then decides that she wants to die somewhere comfortable. Her family and her home that she grew up in, she's not comfortable in. So she goes to a complete stranger's house, her fiance's house, and is resolved to basically die there. Um, well, I guess technically not really. She just wants to stay there for a couple of months and then basically go die elsewhere. Her parents think that she went further south. She went north. So they have absolutely no idea where she is. Um, it's just driving me mad. I think this is like, it's very rare that I get pissed off at a book that I'm reading. And I understand that the people that are writing these usually have a somewhat similar situation or have heard of a similar situation before. Um, which is why you can feel what they're trying to make you feel, which is probably why romance stories are so freaking popular among the females. It's because we long for love, but it never turns out as we expected it, especially since guys are completely oblivious. Um, one of my favorite stories had a male lead. Um, who I think they named him Zach. or something like that. They called him Zay as a nickname. Um, so I believe his full name was Zachary. But he was beaten, abused, neglected, and then the first time he had any romance whatsoever, he was basically raped as a teenager while he was sick. Um, Longing for an actual relationship, but also kind of just given up on it, not really actively searching for it. He takes in basically a runaway. Um, she was running from an abusive family and needed protection, so she went to him. He agreed to help on the condition that she marries him and takes on the role of Duchess. She agrees. Um, there were several conditions mixed in there. She finds out later that through the maids and the butler and everything like that, because they absolutely adored her. Um, he went away to war, so she was basically in the house by herself for 6 months after getting married. And so she kind of changed things around the house. Um, it became brighter, and the maids and the butler don't want her to leave at all. They want her to stay because they've never been taken care of in such a caring way. That's not saying anything bad about him. He just didn't know how to show that he cared. Um, and of course, that also means that he doesn't know how to show that he loves someone. So, of course, when he gets back, he starts buying her jewels and dresses and stuff like that, thinking that's stuff that women like because that's what women who threw themselves at him always wanted was his money and his power. She wasn't happy with any of it. She never used any of it. Uh, and of course, the maid and the butler are all trying to tell him how to woo her. And each time he attempts this, he fails miserably. And she gets irritated one night, goes to his room, and they get into a fight, arguing back and forth. I know you don't have to. She was like, I know you don't know how to show love. I understand that this is difficult for you, but you can't buy someone's heart, blah, blah, blah. And then he argues back that it's not my fault that you're so difficult and you're different from other women and blah, blah, blah. And then this fight kind of goes on for a while. And she gets irritated that she goes back to her room, packs a small bag, and runs out in the middle of the night. Him not knowing how to show love, the one way he does know how to show it, well, the one feature that I really hated about him was his possessiveness over things that he claims are his. When he met her, she was his. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That was it. Anybody tries to take her away, tries to do anything to her, they're dead. She tries to run away, she gets locked up. So once he finds out that she had left the mansion, he sees through the bedroom window, trying to cool his head off to go and talk to her again. He sees her running off with a small bag, gets pissed. He mobilizes the knights in his mansion to go and fetch her. And she evades them all, knowing how to do swordsmanship and other things. Um, Hand-to-hand combat she was really good at. Um, he ends up having to go and get her himself. Um, of course, he didn't leave it just to the knights. He went with them, but he thought the knights would be able to catch one small girl. He was wrong. So, of course, then you've got these two battling. He finally knocks her out, drags her back to the mansion, and literally locks her in a tower. Um, the windows are barred, the doors are locked, the soldiers are stationed at every level of the tower. And to me, I guess the best way to put how that story made me feel was just beautiful. I couldn't really criticize him for not knowing how to show it because, well, men are told to be tough. They're basically brainwashed from a young age to be visual creatures. Tough men don't cry, and all this other crap. Same with girls. You have to be a certain shape, certain height, all this other crap. You have to have makeup on and all this all this other shit. It's fucking ridiculous. And I couldn't really criticize him at all for him finding the only way to show his love. And of course, she couldn't blame him either. Of course, she was pissed that he actually locked her up. I mean, who wouldn't be? But she couldn't really hold it against him because he didn't understand. And then his best friend, the crown prince, basically calls him a complete nutcase. This is not what you do to show your love. Like, are you just going to keep her locked up for the rest of her life to where you have to travel to the back of your own mansion just to go and see your wife? Like, is that the kind of relationship you wanted? And then, of course, he was like, well, no. Like, who wants that type of relationship? He was like, she doesn't seem to understand how much I love her. And of course, there's this whole back and forth, back and forth. And what was really funny is he travels all the way up to this tower. And then when you see the room that she has been locked in, it looks so much nicer than the mansion he lives in. Okay. Like, he fucking took care of her. She's got this gigantic library in there. She's got this huge bed and all sorts of things. It was just it was like you were showing her love. Obviously, you just did it wrong. And of course, so he goes up there and he unlocks the cage, and he unlocks the cell, and she comes out, and she's talking to the crown prince like a normal person, and he of course is getting a little jealous, and of course he grabs his wife and kind of moves towards the cell again, and she pushes him in and shuts the door and locks it on him. And she's like, "You get to see how it feels now." And she takes over the Duke's household basically and does all of his work, goes to parties and to uphold the reputation and everything, and then goes to visit him every now and then. Have you calmed down? Are you feeling better? Are you going to run away if I let you out? Basically patronizing him at this point. Um and she ends up, I can't remember what happens, but someone else who has feelings for her tries to kidnap her, and she runs to the tower to get to the Duke, unlocks the cell, and basically sits in there with him holding the key. And she tells him what's going on, and he gets super pissed. And she said she didn't want the soldiers to get hurt for trying to protect her, that she wants him to go and help, and that she will stay there and wait. So he goes and deals with all of this. The crown prince makes an appearance for like 2 seconds and then vanishes. Um, they take care of the whole situation. He comes back and they both just fall asleep in the tower in the prison cell. Completely just exhausted. They wake up the next morning and the butler brings them coffee, or yeah, coffee, I believe it was, and breakfast. And they're both just sitting in that cell talking as if it was their own little world. And they end up going for a walk. And she turns to him and says, "This is how you show your love." And he still has some issues with it. They keep the story going until after she's had kids. Um, but he still struggles with trying to keep her in a certain place where he can always see her, where he can always touch her, where he can always hear her. He struggles with trusting, basically. Um, it's not that he doesn't trust her, but it's just he's basically scared um, that if she goes too far, he won't be able to protect her. And because she's the only one that's actually showed genuine love for him, concern, worry, anything of the sort, he feels a very strong attachment to her, which, again, you can't really blame him for the way he shows his love after all the crap that he's been through. And when I was reading this story, of course, I would get pissed off and like, that's not how you show your love. What the fuck's wrong with you? And then, of course, they did a side story, basically a filler, and told you his background story. And I was like, oh. I was like, well, shit. He's the main character. I was like, why aren't they showing his background? Why are they showing hers as if she's the main character? It was just because she was the main love interest, and they didn't. The only thing they ever said about him was he came from a screwed up background. Oh, well, screwed up family, basically. Even the butler said, give him some leeway. He's a little messed up. So just like, again, it's Some stories don't get to me at all. Other stories just piss me right the fuck off. Please Throw Me Away was another one, and there's several others that just tick me off. Um, there's this Can We Become Family um, that really gets to me. It just I have food, so I'm gonna have to go and check on that. Um, I hope you guys have a beautiful morning, evening, afternoon, night, whatever time of the day it is for you, and I will talk to you again soon.